The stars had always been beautiful to Admiral Do-yeon Park. He remembered watching them as a child from his grandfather's farm in the countryside. Back then, they seemed like distant dreams. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, they looked like graves. The message had arrived 3 hours ago. 12 colony worlds burned. 4 million humans dead. The Valerian hegemony had attacked without warning, without reason, without mercy, and the galaxy expected humanity to simply accept it. Do-yeon was 52 years old. He had spent 30 years in the military, climbing from a young pilot to the commander of Earth's Third Fleet. He had seen death before. He had caused death before, but nothing had prepared him for this. Among those 12 worlds was New Horizon, where his sister had lived with her husband and 2 children. He had received no word from them. He knew what that silence meant. The door to the bridge slid open. Captain Taiho Shin walked in, his face hard as stone. Taiho had served under Do-yeon for 15 years. They had fought side by side in 3 border conflicts. They had saved each other's lives more times than either could count. Taiho was more than a subordinate. He was a brother. "The council has made its decision," Taiho said. His voice was flat, controlled, but Do-yeon could hear the rage beneath it. "Already?" Do-yeon turned from the window. That was fast. They didn't need much time. Taiho handed him a datapad. Resolution 7742. They're calling it a territorial adjustment. We're forbidden from any military response. If we attack the Valerian, every species in the council will cut ties with Earth. Trade, technology, everything.
Ow.
Do-yeon read the words on the screen. They blurred together, meaningless sounds dressed up as law. Territorial adjustment. As if 4 million lives were just numbers on a map. As if the screaming children and burning cities were simply administrative errors to be corrected with paperwork. He asked. "On her way back from the council station? She'll arrive in 6 hours. Do-yeon nodded slowly. Nari Wong had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Council for 8 years. She was brilliant, patient, and skilled at navigating alien politics, but even she couldn't fight against the entire galaxy. The Valerian hegemony had dominated the council for centuries. They had allies, clients, and servants on every council seat. Humanity was just a newcomer, barely 60 years into their membership. In the eyes of the elder species, humans were children playing at civilization. The hours passed slowly. Do-yeon did not sleep. He reviewed the casualty reports, the damage assessments, the desperate final transmissions from the colony worlds. He listened to a mother calling for her son. He watched a security feed of Valerian soldiers executing prisoners. He forced himself to see everything, to remember everything. Someone had to carry these memories. Someone had to make sure they meant something. When Nari Huang's shuttle finally docked with the station, Do-yeon was waiting. She walked down the ramp looking 10 years older than when she had left. Her diplomatic uniform was wrinkled. Her eyes were red from crying, or from exhaustion, or from both.
"Admiral,"
she said. "I'm sorry." Don't be sorry," Do-yeon replied. "Tell me what happened." They walked together through the corridors of the station. Nari told him everything. She described how she had stood before the council and demanded justice. She described how the Valerian ambassador had laughed at her. She described how the other species had looked away, unwilling to challenge the hegemony. And she described how the final vote had gone unanimously against humanity. "They don't see us as equals," Nari said. "They never have. To them, we're just insects that learn to build starships. Our lives don't matter to them. Our grief doesn't matter to them. Nothing we say or do will ever change their minds." They reached a private conference room. Inside, 2 others waited. Dr. Unibeek, Earth's leading weapons scientist, sat at the table with datapads spread before her. She was young for her position, only 38, but her mind was sharper than anyone Do-yeon had ever met. Beside her stood General Mireille Yoon, the commander of Earth's strategic defense. Mireille was a small woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She had never lost a war game in 40 years of service. Do-yeon closed the door behind them. "You all know the situation. The council has ordered us to do nothing. They expect us to mourn our dead and then move on like good little subjects. What are our options? Yuna asked, officially. None. Doyen sat down heavily. If we retaliate, we lose access to galactic trade routes. We lose technology transfers. We lose allies. We never had allies, Murray said quietly. We had masters who tolerated our existence. There's a difference. Silence fell over the room. They all knew she was right. For 60 years, humanity had tried to fit into the galactic community. They had followed the rules, paid their dues, and accepted their place at the bottom of the hierarchy. And in return, they had received nothing but contempt. Nari Huang reached up and removed her diplomatic insignia. She placed it on the table, the metal catching the light. I spent 8 years believing I could change things through diplomacy. I was wrong. The Council doesn't want peace. They want obedience. And when we gave them obedience, they took it as weakness. So what do? Taiho asked. Doyon looked at each of them in turn. These were the people who would decide humanity's future. A scientist. A general. A diplomat. A captain. And himself. An admiral who had just lost everyone he loved. We make them regret this, he said. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon. We smile and bow and pretend to accept their judgment. And while they're laughing at us, we prepare. We build weapons they've never seen. We train soldiers they can't defeat. We create a force that will make the entire galaxy tremble. Ray nodded slowly. I've been working on something. A contingency plan. I call it Project Prometheus. Hidden shipyards in uncharted space. Sleeper fleets. Weapons caches. Everything we need to wage a war without the Council knowing until it's too late. Yuna leaned forward. I have something too. A weapon that can collapse jump gates. If we can cut off the Velarans' ability to move their fleets, we can destroy them piece by piece. Doyen felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope exactly. It was darker than hope, colder than hope. It was determination. It was the absolute certainty that he would make the Velaran pay for every life they had taken. The Council thinks they've broken us, he said. They think we'll accept this and move on. They're wrong. Humanity doesn't forget. Humanity doesn't forgive. And when we're ready, humanity doesn't lose. He stood and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, his sister's ashes drifted through the void. Somewhere out there, 4 million ghosts waited for justice. We accept their resolution, Doyon said. For now, but we remember everything, and when the time comes, we show them what humans really are. The others rose to join him. In that moment, standing together in the darkness, they made a silent promise. The galaxy had shown humanity its true face. Now humanity would show the galaxy theirs. The war had not yet begun, but it had already been won. 6 months passed after the Council's decision. To the outside galaxy, humanity appeared broken. Earth's representatives spoke softly in council meetings. Human merchants accepted unfair trade deals without complaint. Human colonies kept their heads down and their weapons holstered. The Velaran ambassador reported to his superiors that the humans had learned their place. He could not have been more wrong. In the darkness between stars, where no sensors could reach and no patrols could find them, humanity was building an army. General Murray Yoon stood in the command center of Station Prometheus. The station was hidden inside a dead asteroid, 3 light-years from the nearest mapped system. Only 12 people in all of human space knew its location. From here, Murray commanded a secret network of shipyards, training facilities, and weapons factories spread across dozens of hidden locations. Production report, she said. Her aide pulled up the data. 47 new destroyers completed this month. 12 carriers. 300 fighter craft. The new stealth coding is working better than expected. Our ships are invisible to Velaran sensors at anything beyond close range. Murray nodded. It was not enough. It's not yet. But they were getting closer every day on Earth. Dr. Unibeek worked in her underground laboratory. She had not seen sunlight in 4 months. She barely slept, barely ate, barely spoke to anyone except her research team. All her energy, all her genius, was focused on a single goal, completing the Cascade engine. The weapon was beautiful in its simplicity. Jump gates were the foundation of galactic civilization. They allowed ships to travel between star systems in hours instead of years. Every major species depended on them, and Yuna had discovered a way to destroy them. The Cascade engine generated a specific frequency of gravitational waves. When directed at a jump gate, these waves caused the gate's quantum matrix to collapse. The gate would simply cease to exist, trapping any fleet on the wrong side of the galaxy. Final test complete, her assistant reported. The prototype works perfectly. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. Begin mass production. I want 50 units ready within 3 months. Far from Earth, in a cramped apartment on the Velarin homeworld, a woman named Hannah Choi received an encrypted message. To the aliens around her, Hannah appeared to be a simple translator working for a human trading company. In reality, she was Earth's most valuable spy. She decoded the message quickly. It contained a single question. Ready? Hannah looked out her window at the gleaming towers of the Velarin capital. For 2 years, she had lived among the enemy. She had learned their language, their customs, their secrets. She had seduced officers and bribed officials. She had copied military plans and mapped defense networks. All of it stored in a tiny chip hidden beneath the skin of her left hand. She typed her reply, ready? The information Hannah had gathered was priceless. The locations of every Velarin military base, patrol schedules of their fleets, the access codes for their communication networks. When the war began, humanity would know exactly where to strike. Admiral Doyon Park spent those months traveling. He visited every human colony, every military outpost, every training academy. He spoke to soldiers and civilians alike, listened to their grief and their anger, and he told them the truth. The Council has abandoned us, he said, in 1,000 different rooms to 1,000 different crowds. The galaxy sees us as nothing, but we are not nothing. We are humanity, and we do not surrender. The response was always the same, cheering tears, fists raised in defiance. Humanity was wounded, but it was not broken. Every person Doyon met was ready to fight. They just needed someone to lead them. On the colony world of New Geneva, Doyon met a young pilot named Juwan Kong. Juwan was 24 years old, tall and thin, with eyes that had seen too much pain. He had been born on one of the destroyed worlds. He had watched from a rescue shuttle as Velarin bombs turned his home into fire. I want to fight, Juwan said. I want to make them pay. Doyon studied the young man. He saw the rage burning behind those eyes. He saw the hunger for revenge. He also saw something else. Skill. Juwan's flight records were exceptional. He was a natural pilot, perhaps the best of his generation. Revenge is not enough, Doyon said. If you fight only for revenge, you will die for nothing. Fight for something greater. Fight for the people who are still alive. Fight so that no one else has to suffer what you suffered. Juwan was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I understand, Admiral. When do we begin? Soon, Doyon promised. Very soon. Captain Taeho Shin commanded the training of the new fleet. He pushed his crews harder than any commander in human history. 16-hour days. Live fire exercises. Simulated battles against impossible odds. Many soldiers broke under the pressure. Those who remained became something new, warriors forged in pain and hardened by purpose. You are not fighting for glory, Taeho told them. You are not fighting for medals. You are fighting for your families, your friends, your species. When you face the Velarin, remember what they took from us. Remember the 4 million. Make them remember it too. Counselor Nari Huang played her role perfectly. At every council meeting, she was humble and cooperative. She agreed to new restrictions on human expansion. She accepted insults from the Velarin ambassador with a polite smile. She made the galaxy believe that humanity had given up. In private, she built alliances. There were other species who had suffered under Velarin dominance. Smaller races conquered peoples, forgotten civilizations. Nari found them all. She spoke to them in secret, promising a different future. Hegemony has ruled through fear for too long, she told them. When humanity rises, you can rise with us. Or you can stay under the Velarin boot forever. The choice is yours. Many were too afraid to respond, but some listened. Some remembered their own dead, their own burned worlds, their own stolen futures, and some began to hope. 1 year after the Council's decision, Admiral Do-yeon Park stood once again on the bridge of his flagship. But this flagship was new, built in secret, equipped with weapons the galaxy had never seen. Round him floated a fleet of 200 warships, all hidden in the darkness between stars. The anniversary of the massacre had arrived. In human space, people gathered to mourn their dead. Candles were lit, names were read aloud. Tears fell like rain. In the hidden fleet, there were no tears. There was only cold determination. Do-yeon opened a communication channel to all ships. His voice was steady, quiet, and absolutely certain. 1 year ago, the Velarin murdered 4 million of our people. 1 year ago, the Council told us to accept it. 1 year ago, we promised ourselves that we would never forget. He paused, looking at the stars that surrounded them. Today, we keep that promise. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. Today, we begin. He took a deep breath. All fleets execute Crimson Dawn. Across human space, engines roared to life. Jump gates activated. Hidden weapons emerged from their hiding places, and humanity, silent and patient for so long, finally bared its teeth. The war had begun. The Velarin military base on Kethros Prime had stood for 300 years. It was the largest installation in the hegemony, home to 100,000 soldiers and 200 warships. Its commanders believed it was untouchable. They were wrong. Commander So-min Lee watched the base through her ship's sensors. The stealth destroyer Ghost of Busan hung in the darkness like a shark waiting to strike. Her crew of 60 had trained for this moment for over a year. They knew every weakness in the base's defenses, every gap in its patrol routes, every blind spot in its sensor network. Hannah Choi's intelligence had been perfect. All teams ready, her tactical officer reported. Solomon checked the time. In exactly 30 seconds, 46 other strike teams across Velarin space would begin their attacks. The largest coordinated assault in galactic history. Launch, she said. The Ghost of Busan opened fire. Missiles streaked toward the base's power generators. Explosions bloomed across the facility. At the same moment, Summon's crew activated the cascade engine pointed at the nearby jump gate. The gate shimmered, flickered, and then collapsed into nothing. Any Velarin ships that tried to escape or call for reinforcements would find themselves trapped. Similar scenes played out across the hegemony. Jump gates fell like dominoes. Military bases burned. Orbital stations crumbled. In a single hour, humanity destroyed more Velarin military assets than the hegemony had lost in the previous century. The Velarin home fleet was caught completely by surprise. Admiral Do-yeon Park had timed the attack perfectly. Most of their ships were in port for routine maintenance. When human forces arrived in the home system, the mighty hegemony fleet was scattered and unprepared. All ships engaged, Do-yeon ordered. The battle was brutal but short. Human destroyers tore through Velarin formations with weapons the aliens had never encountered. The new plasma cannons cut through Velarin shields like paper. The stealth torpedoes appeared from nowhere. It's impossible to track or intercept. Captain Taiho Shin led the assault on the orbital shipyards. His battleship, renamed Defiant, carved a path through the enemy defenses. 3 Velarin cruisers tried to stop him. He destroyed all 3 in less than 4 minutes. The shipyards are exposed, Taiho reported, requesting permission to finish them. Granted, Do-yeon replied. Leave nothing standing. Taiho smiled grimly. The shipyards represented decades of Velarin construction. Us. Without them, the hegemony could not rebuild its fleet, gave the order. 100 missiles reduced the facilities to floating debris. News of the attack spread across the galaxy like fire. The Galactic Council erupted in panic. Species that had dismissed humanity now watched in horror as the primitives waged war with terrifying efficiency. Emergency sessions were called, but no one could agree on what to do. The Velarin High Council demanded immediate council intervention, but their allies hesitated. No one wanted to face the humans who had just crippled the most powerful military in the galaxy in a single day. "Hi, Marshal." Torvik took command of the Velar in response. He was old and experienced, a veteran of dozens of campaigns. He gathered what remained of the hegemony fleet and prepared a counterattack. "These humans have surprised us," he told his officers. "It will not happen again. We outnumber them. We have more resources. We will crush them through sheer force." Elder Rasha, the oldest member of the Velarin ruling council, watched the Marshal's speech with worried eyes. She was over 400 years old. She had seen empires rise and fall, and she recognized something in the human attacks that Torvik did not. "You burned their children," she said quietly.
"No."
"Did you think they would simply forget?"
"Not."
Torvik waved his hand dismissively. "They are insects.
"Not."
Clever insects, perhaps, but insects nonetheless. We will remind them of their place." Rasha said nothing more, but she began making quiet preparations to leave the homeworld. The war spread across 3 sectors. Human fleets struck and vanished, appearing from nowhere and disappearing before the Velarin could respond. The guerrilla tactics drove the hegemony commanders mad. They could not find the human bases. They could not predict the human attacks. They could not even track the human ships. Lieutenant Jiwan Kong earned his reputation in the Battle of the Crimson Nebula. His fighter squadron was outnumbered 5-1 by Velarin interceptors. Any other commander would have retreated. Guan attacked. He flew like a demon, his ship dancing through enemy fire with impossible grace. In 90 minutes, he personally destroyed 14 enemy fighters and 2 support cruisers. When the battle ended, the Velarin force had been completely eliminated. Juan had lost only 3 pilots. His squad mates began calling him Reaper. The name spread through the fleet, then through all of human space. Songs were written about him. Children played games pretending to be him. He became a symbol of hope in the darkness of war. But not every battle was a victory. At the Proxima Gate, the Velarin finally managed to trap a human fleet. Captain Taiho Shin's task force was caught between 2 enemy formations, with no escape route. "We're surrounded," his tactical officer reported. "Enemy forces closing from all sides." Taiho studied the situation. The rest of the fleet was counting on his task force to hold this position. If he retreated, the entire campaign would collapse. If he stayed, his ships would be destroyed. He made his decision. "Signal the fleet to withdraw through the secondary route," he ordered. "We'll hold them here as long as we can, sir. That's suicide." "No," Taiho said. "That's duty." The Defiant led the charge into the enemy formation. For 6 hours, Taiho's outnumbered ships fought against overwhelming odds. They destroyed 3 times their number in enemy vessels. They bought precious time for the main fleet to escape. When the Defiant finally fell, its hull torn open by 100 impacts, Taiho was still on the bridge. He refused to leave his post even as the ship broke apart around him. His crew dragged him to an escape pod against his protests. He was rescued 12 hours later, barely alive, floating in the wreckage of his command. The doctor said he would never walk again. They did not know Taiho Shin, Dr. Unibeek, received news of the battle in her laboratory. She worked even harder after that, pushing herself to exhaustion. Every day without more Cascade engines was another day that soldiers like Taiho paid in blood. 50 units completed, her assistant reported 3 weeks later. "Ready for deployment?" Yuna nodded. 50 weapons that could change the course of the war. 50 chances to save lives. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. Admiral Do-Yun Park visited Taiho in the hospital. The captain was wrapped in bandages, connected to machines that kept him alive. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was strong. "Did the fleet escape?" he asked. "Every ship," Do-Yun confirmed. "Because of you." Taiho smiled weakly. "Then it was worth it." Do-Yun took his friend's hand. "Rest now. The war isn't over yet. I need you back on your feet. Just give me a few weeks, Admiral. I'll be ready." Do-Yun believed him. Taiho Shin had never broken a promise. The war continued. Humanity pushed forward, taking territory, destroying bases, liberating worlds that had suffered under Velaran rule. The galaxy watched in amazement as the impossible happened. The mighty hegemony was losing, but the Velaran were not finished. High Marshal Torvik gathered every ship he could find. 300 warships, the largest fleet the hegemony had assembled in centuries. He pointed them at Earth itself. If we destroy their homeworld, he declared, the humans will surrender. Cut off the head and the body will die. The fleet launched toward Sol System. The final battle was about to begin. Earth had never seemed so small. Admiral Doyon Park looked at the blue marble floating in space, home to 10 billion people, and felt the weight of responsibility crushing his chest. 300 Velaran warships were coming to burn it all. His fleet numbered only 92 vessels. Even with their superior technology, even with their better training, the numbers were impossible. For every human ship, there were more than 3 enemies. In a straight battle, they would be overwhelmed. So Doyon refused to fight a straight battle. All ships fall back to Neptune's reach, he ordered. We make our stand in the outer system. Neptune's reach was a field of asteroids and ice at the edge of Sol System. It was treacherous terrain, full of hidden dangers and unpredictable movements. For a large fleet trying to maintain formation, it was a nightmare. For a smaller force using guerrilla tactics, it was perfect. The Velaran fleet arrived 3 days later. High Marshal Torvik sneered when he saw where the humans had positioned themselves. They're hiding among rocks. Pathetic. All ships, advance and destroy them. His officers obeyed. 300 warships pushed into Neptune's reach. Confident in their numbers, they never saw the traps. Human ships had spent weeks preparing the battlefield. Mines floated among the asteroids. Decoy signals created phantom targets everywhere. Hidden weapon platforms waited in the darkness, and the asteroids themselves had been converted into weapons. Rigged with engines that could send them hurtling into enemy ships, the first wave of Velaran vessels ran into a minefield. 17 ships destroyed in seconds. The rest scattered, trying to find safe paths through the debris. That was when the human fleet struck. Destroyers emerged from behind asteroids, fired their weapons, and vanished again before the Velaran could respond. Fighters swarmed through the enemy formation, targeting engines and sensor arrays. The carefully planned Velaran attack dissolved into chaos. Lieutenant Jiwan Kong led his squadron through the heart of the enemy fleet. His call sign had become famous throughout the war, and now he proved why he had earned it. In the first hour alone, he destroyed 8 enemy vessels. Weaving through defensive fire with impossible skill, Reaper. You have 4 bogeys on your tail, his wingman warned. I see them, Guan replied calmly. He pulled his fighter into a sharp turn, looping around an asteroid. The pursuing ships tried to follow. 2 of them collided with the rock. The other 2 flew directly into Jiwan's waiting missiles. Bogeys eliminated, he reported. Moving to the next target, Captain Taiho Shin watched the battle from the bridge of his new ship, the Unbroken. True to his word, he had returned to duty in just 4 weeks. The doctors called it a miracle. Taiho called it stubbornness. His ship held the center of the human line, absorbing the heaviest enemy attacks while the smaller vessels flanked and harassed. The Unbroken took hit after hit, but it refused to fall. Taiho had learned from the Defiant's loss. This time, he would not sacrifice his ship needlessly. Damage report, he demanded. Shields at 40%. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. But all weapon systems are operational. Good enough. Continue firing. Ash! The battle lasted 11 days. 11 days of constant combat, of sleep in shifts, of meals eaten while dodging enemy fire. 11 days of watching friends die and enemies burn. 11 days of hell. On the 6th day, the Velaran tried to break through the human lines with a concentrated assault. 200 ships pushed forward at once, overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. For a moment, it seemed like they might succeed. Then General Mireille Yoon played her final card. The reserve fleets emerged from deep space. 50 warships that the Velaran had never known about, hidden in the darkness beyond the solar system. They struck the enemy from behind, catching them between 2 forces. Torvik screamed at his officers. Where did they come from? How did they hide so many ships? No one could answer him. The humans had prepared for this battle for over a year. They had planned for every possibility, anticipated every Velaran response. And now their preparation was paying off? Commander Soman Lee and the Ghost of Busan had been waiting for this moment. While the main fleets clashed, she had crept closer and closer to the Velaran flagship. Her stealth systems made her invisible to enemy sensors. Her crew moved in perfect silence, barely daring to breathe. We're in position, her tactical officer whispered. 20 kilometers from the target, Sa'aman studied the massive enemy vessel. High Marshal Torvik was aboard that ship. If she could destroy it, the entire Velaran fleet would lose its commander. The battle might end in a single stroke. Prepare boarding pods, she ordered. We're going inside. The Ghost of Busan launched its assault team. 30 soldiers in powered armor, the best trained special forces humanity had ever produced. They cut through the flagship's hull and poured inside. The fighting was brutal. Velaran soldiers met them at every corridor, every junction. But the humans pushed forward, driven by years of rage and grief. They reached the reactor core in less than an hour. Saman herself planted the charges. She set the timer for 5 minutes. Enough time to escape if they ran. Then she led her surviving team back to their entry point. They made it with seconds to spare. The Ghost of Busan pulled away just as the flagship's reactor exploded. The massive vessel broke apart, fire consuming everything inside. High Marshal Torvik died without ever knowing what had killed him. The Velaran fleet shattered. Without their commander, without coordination, the remaining ships scattered in panic. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to flee. None escaped. On Earth, billions watched the battle's end through live broadcasts. When the final Velaran vessel was destroyed, the celebration began. People poured into the streets, laughing and crying and hugging strangers. For the first time in the war, they truly believed they might win. Admiral Doyon Park did not celebrate. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the debris field that had once been an enemy fleet. Each piece of wreckage represented dead soldiers, alien though they were. He took no joy in their deaths, but he did not regret them either. Dr. Unibeek contacted him from Earth. Admiral, we've received word from Counselor Wong. The neutral species are ready to talk. They want to join us. Doyan nodded slowly. Nari had been working on this for months, building alliances, making promises, turning former observers into active supporters. The war was not just about destroying the Velaran. It was about creating something new.
Allow her to proceed,
He said. We need all the allies we can get. Taiho Shin limped onto the bridge. His injuries still bothered him, but his spirit was unbreakable. What now, Admiral? Doyan turned to his old friend. Now we finish what we started. The Velaran homeworld is undefended. Their fleet is gone. Their marshal is dead. Are we going to destroy them? Taiho asked. The way they destroyed our colonies. Doyan was silent for a long moment. Part of him wanted exactly that. Part of him wanted to burn the Velaran worlds the way they had burned New Horizon. Part of him wanted revenge so badly he could taste it. But that was not why they had fought. That was not what humanity stood for. No, he said finally. We're not like them. We never were. We go to the Velaran homeworld, and we demand their surrender. If they accept, we show them mercy. If they refuse, he paused, then we do what we must. Taiho nodded slowly. Understood, Admiral. The fleet began preparing for its final journey. The war was almost over. Only one battle remained. The Velaran homeworld was beautiful. Admiral Doyan Park had not expected that. He had imagined a cold, harsh place, as cruel as the people who lived there. Instead, he saw green continents and blue oceans, mountains reaching toward the sky and cities glittering in the sunlight. It looked peaceful. It looked innocent. His fleet surrounded the planet. 120 warships, including vessels from the 12 species that had joined humanity's cause. Former victims of Velaran aggression, now standing together against their old masters. Hail them, Doyan ordered. The Velaran ruling council appeared on his screen. They looked old and tired, their faces marked by fear. Elder Rasha sat among them, her expression unreadable. "You have come to destroy us," one of the counselors said. It was not a question. "No," Doyan replied. "I have come to offer you a choice. Surrender unconditionally, accept full responsibility for your crimes, and submit to the judgment of the galactic community. Or refuse and face the consequences." "What consequences?" another counselor demanded. "You wouldn't dare bombard our cities. You claim to be better than us. Prove it." Doyan's expression did not change. "I won't bombard your cities, but I will blockade your world until you starve. I will destroy every ship that tries to leave or enter your system. I will cut you off from the galaxy entirely. Your civilization will collapse within a year." Silence fell over the council chamber. They had expected threats of violence. They had not expected this cold, patient ruthlessness. Elder Rasha spoke at last. "Admiral Park, I warned our leaders against attacking your people. I told them they were making a terrible mistake. They did not listen. Now, I ask you, is there any path to peace that does not involve the complete humiliation of our species?" Doyan considered her question carefully. He thought about his sister and her children. He thought about the 4 million dead. He thought about all the pain and suffering the Velaran had caused. "There is," he said finally, "but it requires something your people have never offered to anyone: honesty. Admit what you did. Apologize to the families of those you killed. Pay reparations to rebuild what you destroyed. And accept limitations on your military so that you can never threaten another species again. And if we do all this, then we will welcome you back into the galactic community. Not as masters, but as equals. Not as conquerors, but as neighbors. That is the future I offer you. The alternative is extinction." The council debated for 3 hours. Doyan waited patiently, watching the planet turn below him. Finally, they returned with their answer. "We accept your terms," Elder Rasha announced. She had clearly taken control of the council during the debate. "The Velaran hegemony surrenders to the Allied fleet. We will comply with all your demands." Doyan felt no triumph, only relief that the killing could finally end. 1 week later, the Galactic Council convened for an emergency session. For the first time in its history, every seat was filled. Species that had avoided politics for centuries came to witness what would happen next. Admiral Doyan Park walked into the assembly chamber in his full-skit military uniform. Medals covered his chest, each one representing a battle, a sacrifice, a hard-won victory. Behind him walked representatives of 12 allied species, their presence a clear message to everyone watching. The Velaran ambassador was notably absent. His seat had been given to Elder Rasha, who would speak for her people during this new era. Doyan approached the central podium, the same podium where Nari Huang had stood 2 years ago, begging for justice and receiving only contempt. Now, the entire galaxy listened. 2 years ago, "My people were attacked without warning or reason," he began. 4 million humans were murdered. We came to this council seeking justice. Instead, we were told to accept our losses and move on. We were told that our lives did not matter." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We did not accept that verdict. We could not accept it. And so we fought. We fought not because we wanted war, but because we had no other choice. We fought not for conquest, but for survival. We fought not alone, but alongside every species that had suffered under tyranny." He gestured to the allies standing behind him. "Today we do not come as conquerors. We come as liberators. The old order is finished. The age of empires ruling through fear is over. A new era begins today, and it will be built on different principles." He pulled out a datapad and began reading the terms of the new resolution. First, the Velaran hegemony will pay full reparations to every species they have harmed. Second, their military will be reduced to defensive forces only, with international oversight. Third, any species that attacks another without provocation will face the united response of all council members. Fourth, all species, regardless of their age or power, will have an equal voice in council decisions. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was revolutionary. For centuries, the elder species had dominated galactic politics. Now, a young race was proposing to change everything. These terms are not negotiable, Doyan continued. Anyone who opposes them is free to stand against us. But know that humanity and its allies will defend this new order with everything we have. We did not win this war to return to the old ways. We won it to build something better. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. The galaxy dismissed us as primitives, as insects, as children playing at civilization. You were wrong. Humanity is young, yes, but our youth is our strength. We have not become tired and corrupt like the old empires. We still remember what justice means. We still care about right and wrong, and we will fight for those principles until our last breath. He stepped back from the podium. I call for a vote. The vote was unanimous, not because everyone agreed with humanity's terms, but because no one dared to oppose them. The new order was born. 6 months later, Admiral Doyan Park retired. He had spent his entire adult life fighting wars. Now finally, he could rest. He bought a small house on one of the rebuilt colony worlds. Far from the centers of power, Dr. Unibeek took charge of a new research initiative. No more weapons. Instead, she directed humanity's greatest minds toward exploration and discovery. There were still countless mysteries in the galaxy, and she intended to solve them all. Captain Taiho Shin became an admiral himself, taking command of the peacekeeping fleet that patrolled the rebuilt territories. He never fully recovered from his injuries, walking with a limp for the rest of his life, but he never complained. Every step reminded him of what they had won. Commander Soman Lee retired from active service and wrote a memoir about her experiences. It became the most widely read book in human history. People on 100 worlds learned her story and drew strength from it. Lieutenant Jiwan Kong remained a pilot. He could not imagine any other life. But he stopped fighting wars and started training the next generation. He taught them everything he knew about flying, about courage, about duty. He made sure they understood why they served. Counselor Nari Wang became the first human elected to the council presidency. She worked tirelessly to strengthen the alliances that had won the war. Under her leadership, the galaxy began to heal. Hannah Choi disappeared. Some said she retired to a quiet life somewhere. Others claimed she still worked in the shadows, protecting humanity from threats they never knew about. No one knew the truth except Hannah herself. She never told anyone. 1 year after the war's end, Jiwan Kong returned to the place where his homeworld had been. There was nothing left of the colony itself, but a memorial had been built in orbit. A simple stone monument floating in space, carved with 4 million names. Giwan docked his shuttle and walked through the memorial's corridors. He found his family's names near the end, his parents, his younger brother, his grandmother. He placed a single white flower beneath the stone. "We didn't forget you," he whispered. "We never will." He stood there for a long time, remembering the fire that had taken everything from him, remembering the rage that had driven him through the war, remembering the friends he had lost and the enemies he had killed, but mostly he remembered hope. Hope for a future where no one would suffer as he had suffered. Hope for a galaxy where justice mattered more than power. Hope for a humanity that had risen from tragedy to build something beautiful. The stars shone outside the memorial's windows, bright and eternal. They were the same stars Jiwan had watched as a child, dreaming of adventure among them. Now those dreams had become reality, paid for in blood and tears. Humanity had not asked to become warriors. They had wanted only to explore, to discover, to find their place among the stars. But when the galaxy demanded submission, they had answered with fire. When tyranny threatened their existence, they had fought back with everything they had. And in the end, they had won. Not just the war, but something greater. They had proven that courage and justice could triumph over cruelty and fear. They had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. They were the children of Earth. They were dreamers and fighters. scientists and soldiers, poets and warriors. They were small and young and new to the stars, and they would never, ever give up. The memorial floated in silence, a testament to the lost and a promise to the living. Guiwan touched the stone one last time, then returned to his shuttle. There was still work to do. There would always be work to do, but for now at least there was peace. And that was enough.